Hello, everybody. I am Ron Hamlin, the founder of Virtual Reload. We do esports coaching and tournaments, and our focus is to help high school students get into the world of esports. Tonight, we are talking about how to combat toxicity in gaming and esports and why it's important. So, I wanted to go ahead and go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves, and we'll go ahead and start with Jody.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jody Farmer, head coach for Call of Duty at the University of Oklahoma, as well as a streamer influencer for Wounded Warrior Project with Stream to Serve and part of the stream team at the University of Oklahoma.
Awesome. And I did not realize that my phone is actually on a little bit. Okay, there we go. Go ahead, Terry.
Hey everybody, Terry Bonneau, aka Revolver, former pro player from way back in the day, director of business development and head coach at Virtual Reload right now, as well as I stream from time to time.
Only occasionally, right?
Yeah.
All right, Jared.
My name's Jared Sammons, also known as Scoot. I'm the director of esports operations at Virtual Reload, and I YouTube more than I stream these days.
Nice. That's going pretty well for you, isn't it?
Yeah, we've saw exponential growth over the last 3 months, and we've hit milestone after milestone, and looking towards the future.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, just a moment here. Okay, so the primary reason we're here today is to talk about toxic gaming, toxic esports, and how we might be able to actually help reduce that. The fact is that many kids and adults experience really bad situations when they're online and gaming, whether it be someone that is just attacking them in the game incessantly, spawn camping, whatever it may be, or verbally attacking them. And this goes really, it impacts a lot of people that game. It's not just any particular gender or age group. I mean, I've experienced it. I imagine everybody on this panel has experienced it. And that's what we're here to talk about. It definitely impacts self-image, self-esteem. That sometimes may even cause you not to want to go back into the game, and that is not good for anybody. So I'd like to have us share personal experiences with this. Who would like to go first in that?
I guess I'll go first. So a little bit more background. I entered the industry full time back in 2008. So I predate the professionalism approach that esports is definitely geared towards in the last 10 years. And yeah, it's come a long way, but there's always room for improvement. A lot of times on discussions of toxicity, you have the people that always bring up, oh, they wouldn't survive a Modern Warfare 2 lobby. Well, just because we had to endure such issues in the the beginning of this industry that we have now, doesn't mean that everybody should have to go through that. We can always improve upon where we've been, and we can always improve with where we are. And that comes down to nowadays, especially with the integration of social media, with the way social media and the esports industry are intertwined to a degree, it's important to remember that person on the other side of the game, as well as the other person that on the other side of that screen name, they are people. This isn't just an NPC that you're taking your frustrations out on. These are actual people, and the golden rule, right, is do unto others as you would have done unto you. So I think it's important to remember that the people that you are affecting, like, you wouldn't want that being done to you. Don't do it to other people. But historically, personal experiences with toxicity, there's a myriad of stories I could tell, but early on, there were, back in 2009, 2010, there's the elitism aspect that comes with competition, that gatekeeping that comes, and, I'm not saying that we need to be open arms of everybody who plays the game is the same as a professional player on a skill level, but they're still human beings. These are still people that have feelings. These are still people that are enjoying the same passion that you were passionate about. And I think it's important that we remember that.
Awesome. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I could talk on it. I have an interesting perspective because I am a leader of, being a coach at a D1 university and just trying to teach the guys that they're no longer an I or an individual, that they're a team. And so building each other up is a lot better than tearing each other down. But what can be really difficult is you don't see a lot of females taking a leadership role in esports as much as you would like to. So they see me as and it's been tweeted that I am a middle-aged woman, so what in the world can I know about competition first-person shooters? And it's interesting because I was put in this role because of my military experience and my ideas of tactics and understanding critical thinking and how to bring these young minds around instead of just being that introvert and working together. So there's so much more in the esports aspects than just being a good gamer behind a controller or a keyboard and mouse. So it's not just fighting it in the game, it's fighting it outside the game and on these social media networks that has been so interesting. And what's been really great about it is my college has had my back. Like, when people start coming after me, I don't say anything because I don't want to egg them on or give them a reason to continue. But my college and my leadership within the college will shut them down, especially if it's another college team or another college coach, because there's a lot of young people that are leading some of these teams in the college aspect. And so they may not have some of that collaboration type ideas. And so they're very used to, like you said, toxicity, tearing each other down instead of finding ways to help build each other up. So that was kind of like my first throwing myself into this esports world, is kind of combating that whole thought process of, I'm a female and I'm a leader. Y'all got to deal with me now. So it's been kind of interesting in that aspect. But if I go to the gaming side of it, I find myself, even with the title I coach, I don't like playing public matches. If I'm not playing with people I know and have a rapport with, I won't go into those matchmaker public things. I will go and play Zombies, I'll go play New World, I'll go play Witcher 3. I'll play other games and not my game title with Call of Duty unless I'm playing with people I know, because I don't want to deal with some of those comments that come along, especially once they hear my voice. You just get some of those, oh, gotta carry the extra weight here, or the whole, can I have your phone number? Are you looking for a boyfriend? So, yeah, it's just, I kind of roll with it, but at the same time, I shouldn't have to. So that's what I'm here to change, which is why, I don't know, I would say toxicity, we have to start working with youth. Youth isn't going to know, we're not going to change the next generation of gamers unless we start working with youth.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So today you have the support of the school, but before you were in that side of your career, maybe even as a young girl when you were playing, I'm sure you experienced that. That's how you know you don't want to be in those public lobbies, right? Because it was bad when you were younger too, I imagine.
Well, gaming was always for my brother. If you ask my mom or my stepdad, what do I want to do with video games? That's a boy thing, not a girl thing.
Wow.
I should be doing more girl things. Like, even today, my mom's like, what are you doing in the gaming space? That was your brother's passion, not yours. And I'm like, Mom, it is so much more than that. And that's where I get into talking about the positive effects that gaming has on mental health. Because as a disabled veteran, gaming has taken me out of some pretty dark places. And the fact that I'm disabled and broken isn't an aspect doesn't matter in gaming. I can be a leader again. I can be influential again. And it doesn't matter that I have a messed up spine and a broken hip. So I just find that this is a space where it is so diverse and completely inclusive that I didn't have in any other aspect on the civilian sector once I got out of the military.
I always comment that gaming or esports specifically, when you talk about if you put every sport on the table, football, soccer, esports, all of it. Esports is a level playing field. Anybody that wants to play a sport can play esports. If you have like your situation, you're disabled, you can still play Call of Duty, but you wouldn't be able to go play soccer, right? Probably not, anyways. So, all right, Terry, we haven't heard your aspect on this. What's your personal toxic story?
So, kind of similar to Jared. I'm from pre 2010 2011 areas when I was playing. I competed right around there. I competed in Halo and Gears back then, and Gears especially was notorious for its trash talk and that kind of thing. But a big part of the reason I ended up actually leaving esports at that point in time was because of basically the main issue was teams were getting very toxic within each other because the majority of people that were playing had never really been in a true team environment, and there was nobody out, from a third person perspective that can work with the team to say, no, you need to be, you're wrong, or you're kind of like, as a coach or someone can do. And I come from a hockey background. I played up through junior B, and I coached and officiated youth hockey for 10 years. And that's what I did when I left esports. And I realized after doing that for a while that if we could bring that kind of structure to esports, it could really help to combat the toxicity, because a big piece of what toxicity is it's kind of more so like an understanding issue, right? My best friend and I competed on several different teams together, and we have said things to each other that I will never repeat ever in my life. And it was just because we're very competitive, and we had an understanding that we were going to say crazy things, and we didn't mean it. We were just competitive. But that doesn't work when I'm solo queuing in League and the guy's mad at you. Some guy who I've never spoken to before is freaking out at me because I made a bad play. That's what I would be considering really toxic. And when you combine those two things, esports can get really extra toxic because everybody's very competitive, but a lot of these people don't have the communication skills that you get when you're on a team for a team sport or something like that, and learning how to be able to sit down and have a heated conversation with your teammate in between rounds, in between shifts, whatever it might be, respectfully and heatedly, because you're competitive, but at the end of the day, being able to come to an understanding. And that was a huge problem in esports when I left, and like it was almost impossible to keep a team together for any period of time, because after one too many fights, one person would just quit. I can't tell you how many times I had to cancel a tournament because one of the teammates just decided he didn't want to be on the team anymore because this or that. And it's gotten much better over the years, but I really think it's something that we can kind of take from traditional sports and try to apply amongst a lot of other things to esports, and I think it'll help combat it a bit.
And to piggyback off of what Terry shared with us is, my professional career was from 2008 to 2019, and me and him swapped war stories. I've probably been on 1,200 different teams throughout my career, and a lot of that was those early stages where there is no mediator. It's just a bunch of young kids that are competitive as all get out. They want to be the best, and I think something that as we move forward as an industry, you're going to see more coaches, you're going to see more team therapists come in as those mediators to really kind of get all personalities on one goal, rather than, again, what Terry said with the understanding and communication issues. That's something that we can start teaching at a young level, of that team environment, that teamwork, that leadership, and just really setting out and drawing the line between what is constructive feedback for an overall, we want to reach the goal of being the best, and what is not constructive and is just tearing down your teammates.
A perfect example of I guess toxicity and of the end result of that environment kind of molding a pro. If anybody's ever paid attention to North American League of Legends, you've probably heard of Dardoch. Probably the most mechanically talented league player in North America, and he can't find a job because he gets kicked off of every team within a month because he's so toxic. Had he had some sort of different kind of upbringing within the esports community, that probably wouldn't be an issue.
And it's great because I've seen students that have had that idea of, well, it's always been toxic, so why are you trying to change it? And getting them to understand that it's going to take another 5 to 10 years of us working our butts off and teaching the next generation for, I think, that to set in. But I literally had a student, like, butt heads with me because Call of Duty has always been toxic. Why am I trying to change the wheel now? I looked at him and was like, you want scholarships. You want to be taken seriously by the university. You want to be, have that chance because they are like, I'm path to pro. Pro teams aren't going to want you if you keep this kind of attitude. It's just not allowed.
Right.
So it's just that, that nurturing or whatever word you want to call it with some of these students.
And there's definite truth to that. My time as a team manager for professional teams and GM and stuff like that, like I've passed on great talent because they had a terrible attitude. It becomes it's just like any other industry, right? You don't want toxicity in your work environment because then you don't accomplish your goals.
Yep.
And part of it also, again, comes down to a misconception of what toxicity is and isn't, right? So from the outside perspective, if you're watching a streamer, say I come from Apex, so it's just top of my mind. If you watch TSM, Apex team, they basically just scream at each other in between games. They're basically just screaming at each other. But similarly to my best friend and I, they have an understanding that that's just kind of how they get it out, how they communicate, and how it works. And to them, it's not toxic. And it works. But to someone who doesn't understand that there's that understanding, they're sitting here going, well, the best of the best are screaming at each other. Why shouldn't I be doing it? And it's like, well, because that team, all three of those players respond to that. And so they know that that's what, but your teammates may not. Right. Yeah. And it's all about understanding that toxicity isn't so much about what you're doing and more so about how it's affecting the person that you're interacting with. And a lot of people just kind of think, well, people are, Tyler 1's really good and he's toxic and he's, he's really entertaining or, this, that, and the other thing, but it doesn't mean you actually should be toxic. It's two different things, and also understanding that it's really a big part of just understanding how to communicate with your teammates
and I think that
what drives them.
From that aspect of TSM and the yelling, like, that's probably just part of culture, right? Like, there's certain things that a white person can't say to a black person, but a black person can say to another black person, right? I mean, obviously, depending on the culture that you're in, those interactions are not necessarily toxic between those parties, but it would be if it was with someone else, right?
Yeah, toxicity is all about how it's affecting the other person.
Yep.
If it doesn't affect the other person, then it's not toxic.
Right.
My I'm sure everybody in the stream has answered the phone once and said, hey, insult here to one of their best friends. That's not toxic. That's just being funny with your best friend.
Right.
But if you say that to a random person who's calling you, it's a little toxic. That's a bit of a problem.
Yeah. You answer the phone that way every time.
It was really great. I don't know if any of y'all caught it or watched any of it. I watched it, the reveal on Wednesday where T-Pain was like the host and Activision did their big reveal for Vanguard. Well, there was like 5 other rappers that joined him that played with 4 pro players and 2 pro streamers. 3 of the 4 pro players were from FaZe Clan. And when they were showing like the rappers in game and their chatter, it was completely different than the programmers or the pro gamers who were quiet and focused. And then you have the rappers like shooting off at the mouth, this and that, and just like getting kind of angry, and you see them kind of like really making these actions towards their cameras. So it was, you could see the difference between someone that was just there because they're a big star name and they're not a pro gamer versus the pro gamers that are there that were focused in the game. Didn't matter that they hadn't played the map yet, and they weren't reacting to the noise around them. So that was a really great thing to watch.
I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that they were in that structure. So I grew up playing hockey long before I was playing competitive video games, and in hockey, when you get frustrated, it's not really a bad thing because you can skate harder, you throw a harder check, you shoot the puck harder, that kind of thing. It can help feed your kind of your emotion and your anger almost. It doesn't work when you're playing video games. When something bad happens and you're passionate about it and you're frustrated about it, there's no real way to get that out, and that feeds into toxicity a lot because you don't know what else to do, so you just start screaming. And of course, you're not going to blame yourself. It's definitely lag or something else. But when you're in a structured environment, you're going to get called out on that. They're not going to let that happen because you need to shut up so we can communicate. You need to, for a million different reasons, but the main one obviously being we need to be respectful here.
So I want to move on to the next part of the conversation. I have a theory about why there is so much of this in the gaming world. And after I discuss that, I want us all to kind of weigh in on the thought here. So most adult gamers today did not do something that was a team aspect when they were kids, because that was what they did when they were kids, was gaming. Also, in the world of gaming at home, you become a solo player, maybe even in a team game like Call of Duty, but you're not really playing with people all the time that you know. So you get to your level of skill in the game, which might be better than a lot of other people. So when you get into a team that is, not the greatest, you're gonna say something about it, right? You're not as an adult, they don't become well adjusted to interacting with other people because they've been just gaming alone for most of their childhood life. So they don't get this team building connection because they're not in another sport. They get an ego because they get really good at their game, and then they just get into this pattern that is unhealthy in how they treat others by the time that they're an adult. So they just continue to, spout off whenever they, get into a situation where they're either doing really good or they're being brought down because the other teammates aren't doing well. Things like that. So I wanted to get y'all's weigh in on that thought of being the cause of this.
So I read something a while ago, somebody who had an idea that the reason that, and this was a league specific comment, but it obviously, I feel like it fits to most things, but the point that you were making that made me think of it was that, you get to this certain level and then you're playing people who might not be as good as you are, and that's very frustrating. And he basically explained it as it's kind of like sitting in traffic. You kind of know that everybody's supposed to know what they're supposed to do. Kind of expect that somebody did something wrong. It's screwing up your day. It's adding time. It's making you this, that, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And it's so insanely frustrating because you didn't do anything wrong, but because somebody else did something wrong, your experience is changing in a negative way. I feel like that's very similar to that kind of scenario, because if you're not used to, understanding how to play with players who aren't as good as you and make them better, you're going to see their mistakes instead of how can I help them with that? Or it's as you're so dumb. Why are you an idiot? Why are you ruining my experience when I'm working so hard for this?
To build on Ron, what he was talking about, I think you're right. There's a lot of introverts in gaming. They're not used to being social. They're not used to having cliques and groups. And I know that we're trying to fight or combat that in a way with trying to hold camps, youth camps in different games, whether it be Minecraft, Fortnite, Rocket League, some of these age appropriate games for, I would say, 6th through 8th grade. Because if we can get to a younger generation before they get to high school, we can do the same thing that Little League does, or football camp does, or basketball, all those things that teach people to work together. We can have those kind of camps in esports. And over COVID, I've seen people doing these camps virtually, like Mav Gaming in Dallas Fort Worth started doing youth camps this summer, trying to mentor these kids in NTK or N2K to teach them how to get into this NBA virtual game. And then when they wanted to blow off steam, they played Call of Duty. Or if they wanted to, kind of mess things up a bit to get the kids laughing, they'd play a round of Among Us or Jackbox or whatever. And they met virtually through Discord like this. It's the same thing that I've been seeing with another group that popped up this summer, Esports Scholar, where they're actually sitting down and explaining to middle school kids why you need to choose a gamer tag that you'll be proud to have follow you around because you're building your own personal brand. How to think about that and trying to make them think that, I've had to explain to a few college students that their gamer names are not appropriate if they want to be part of our roster teams in college esports because we get jerseys. And do you want everybody on the college campus to know you as toe sucker? I don't see a lot of people, that's not really something you want
great.
everybody to know you by. And that was my team captain, by the way. He's now since changed it.
That's a very normal thing. I mean, how many times have, especially like in the beginning of League esports, like Sneaky is a former AD carry. That was not his original name. It was something way more inappropriate than that. That was a very, very it reminds me a little bit of when I was in high school and they first started being like, emails are going to be sticking around. You should probably make an email that like people understand who it is when they receive it, even if they don't have that. And it's kind of the same thing now where it's like, especially now that on PC games, there's not really a name filter in the way that there used to be where, you had to add 4 X's and change the spelling this way so you can get the name. You can now just, make the name whatever you want. That's an important thing that's funny. Sorry.
No, it's just funny because in the last year, just 1 year, I've had to tell 3 students outright, you have to change your name or you can't be on this roster. And 2 of the names I can't say on stream because it's just that inappropriate.
Wow.
So yeah, it's.
I think issues like that is something that hopefully is being phased out as we do the youth outreach and the educational experiences through esports. And I think a lot of that does stem from the industry that we all know and love today. Like it started out as a counterculture. It was the people that didn't do traditional sports. It was the like Dungeons and Dragons in the 90s. It was the modernization of that. The society's forgotten, so to speak. But as we do like the youth outreach, we do the camps, we do the educational programs, the after school programs, things of that nature. I think that is the steps forward to kind of stomp that out, that lack of awareness as far as self-branding and things of that nature go. Because 10 years ago, who would have thought we were all as connected as we are today? And realistically, esports started, 20, 30 years ago now? At this point, we're talking like 1.6 era. Like, it's only, we definitely saw a push for professionalism, especially with the rise of LCS and the franchise leagues, things of that nature, it's only going to get more ingrained, that professionalism, as we move forward.
Yeah, personally, I think one of the kind of ways we can kind of work about this again, it really is just that youth outreach piece. I know Scoot and I both played traditional sports growing up, and I'm sure he'd say the same thing. When we were competing, I could instantly tell you who played traditional sports and who only played video games when I was interacting with someone, because it was they understood the back and forth between teammates, and that, yeah, just because you're calling me out on a mistake doesn't mean that I should turn around and call you out on your mistake. No, we get to talk about that kind of thing, and that helps to really lower toxicity overall, especially because the more normalized the general populace that plays the game is when in a team environment, that's going to transfer into pubs as well, and into solo queue and stuff like that, because they're going to realize that, well, I learned last week that if I phrase this way, it'll actually help this player, because I'm actually, when I say play safe to my top laner who's died 4 times, I'm not trying to piss him off. I'm trying to say, hey, like, is there a way that we can help you? Like, can you try to play a little bit safer? Like, can I work? Like, but play safe is a really tilting thing to say. So we teach on a team, like, no, don't just say play safe. Explain, say, hey, how can I help you play safer? How can I, like, that kind of thing? And that starts at the young ages. I mean, 80% of what we were doing.
That's like saying Call of Duty, don't die.
Right. Like,
how do I not die? Give me a little bit more than that, right?
Yeah, a big part. So in coaching youth sports is actually, again, what kind of brought me back into esports in a way. And one of the first things that we always did at the beginning of every season was we gave the 1% talk, which I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's 1% of 1% of 1% of 1. It goes on for a while, of players who play hockey make it to X level, and then 1% of that, and so on and so forth. And the idea behind that is we're trying to make it clear to everybody in the room, including the kids and the parents and everybody, that we're not really here to coach hockey. We're actually really here to coach your kids and teach them how to be teammates, and teach them how to be decent people and responsible. And hockey's really just the tool. And I feel like esports can be the exact same thing. And at the same time, it'll also be used as a tool to help stop Riot from having to ban 5,000 accounts a day because of toxicity.
And I think to piggyback off of that, Terry, I think as we have more established, laid out, fully transparent paths to professional play in esports, it's going to combat that ego kind of thing going on. Because from a team management standpoint, talent scouting, trying to pick up a roster, I'm not looking for the best of the friend group. I'm not looking for the best of the county. I'm not looking for the best in the state. I'm looking for the best in the nation. So you have these kids that grow up in that closed off, introverted environment where they don't have the structure, and they're the best of their friend group, so they're the best. They're the guys. They can do it all, until they go up against other competition that is also the best of their friend groups. And I think these paths to professional play, as they're more cemented, they're more laid out, they're more transparent, you have those interactions where the best of the best are fighting each other over and over. It's humbling. It's a humbling experience to get your teeth kicked in a video game. You see where you stand amongst the competition. And I think with early onset, like youth educational outreach, as well as like youth specific tournaments, leagues, things of that nature, if we end up, who knows, 5 years from now, we've got a nationally syndicated high school esports division. Who knows what that does for the landscape, right? I think it can only be good.
That's a great point, because, in my aspect, I'm at a D1 college, and we're not about our rostered teams. We're about building a community. We're about building relationships with students, having a safe place for them to go to, not necessarily who's going to annihilate and just completely decimate the other teams. So it's just, interesting because we want to build a foundation of path into industry at the college level and not path to pro. So how you guys were talking about, when you, with your hockey team, that you're not here to make them a pro hockey player. That's how we want to use esports as well. We want to use this as a tool to make them a better person, to make them more formidable in the workplace, because there's so many aspects of team building and critical thinking in esports that can be used in your day-to-day life outside of the video game.
Yeah, in to slightly kind of continue on what Jared was saying, and kind of goes into that as well. A big part of all of this again is that ego thing, and that's because in anything that you're trying to get better at, right? You look to the person who's better than you. Well, if everybody that you play with isn't as good as you, you're not going to listen to anything that they say. So you're not going to be used to being able to take constructive criticism. You're not going to, for example, I have a friend of mine who I had to kind of teach this to, where it was basically like, just because I also made a mistake on that play doesn't mean we can't talk about your mistake. Yes, I ran off into the middle of the field and died. Pretty obvious that was a dumb idea. We don't really need to go into it too much. I understand that you're better than I am, but I can see this little mistake that you made that you may not have seen. Let's talk about it. A lot of players who don't grow up in a team environment where the coach can call them out on that, why would I listen to, if I'm diamond, why would I listen to this, my buddy who's hard stuck platinum, who's trying to tell me something, even though he's very well could be right.
Yeah, and to tack onto that, like some of the absolute best talent I've ever played with from my time playing professionally, they were their own worst critics. I think from a coaching standpoint, my philosophy is I'm teaching you how to teach yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you internalize your issues and you're looking at your own play through the sharpest of microscopes, it's only going to make you better. Even a great play, there's probably 5 or 6 things you could have done better to make it even greater. And I think that obviously difference of opinion with coaching philosophy, but that I find great success with that approach.
All right, we have a late arrival. Joe Mans with Thirsty Minds or Rage Girls is on here with us. Hey, Joe.
Hey, how you doing, everybody?
How's it going, Joe?
It's a little crazy today.
So, Joe, can you introduce yourself to us and talk a little bit about what you're doing at both the school program that you've got and what Rage Girls is about?
Yes, my name is Joe Mans. I'm the founder and CEO of Thirsty Minds. I also have a program within the school district where I'm teaching kids game design, and with game design, learning from the path from actual from going from, let's say, the pipeline beginning from idea to concept to actual production. We are actually starting a league called Rage Girls, and basically it's creating an environment for girls to actually compete in the games that they love. We find out there's a lot of girls who are really, really, really good, but because they're being attacked so much, either online or on games or hit on inappropriately, it's like, okay, I don't want to. Or it could be a cultural thing. They say, okay, you're a girl, you should be playing games, you should be playing with dolls and stuff, which is not true. That's what Rage Girls, giving up kind of like a pathway from dealing with middle school, high school, collegiate, and possibly building a way to a more professional background.
That is awesome. Thanks for joining us tonight. So we're kind of on the last topic of the conversation tonight. Basically, what is the solution to this? How do we get rid of the toxicity overall? We talked about what it is. We talked about what causes it. And now we're on to this. Essentially, if you were to walk onto a football field and have the same attitude that a lot of these gamers have towards their teammates and opponents, you wouldn't last very long on that football team. They don't allow this kind of stuff in traditional sports. So one of the things I see is starting what we're all talking about, these youth camps, esports in high schools and middle schools, getting these kids to join a gaming team for esports, and then not just having them play, but also imparting those team building aspects that you have in all other sports. If you mouth off to your coach or your teammates or your opponents, there's going to be some level of repercussion to that. You can't just do that. It shouldn't be allowed. That's the only way that we're going to ultimately change the environment, I think.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start on this because I actually come, like I said, from traditional sports coaching. I can't tell you how many times I sat the best player on the team because he said something stupid or was mean to a teammate in the locker room or whatever it might be. You're 100% right. Traditional sports, that doesn't fly. I don't care how good at the sport you are. You could be the only reason we have a shot at winning this game, and I will happily watch you sit in the corner quietly on the bench for the entire game if it means that I'm not promoting a toxic environment, because that's going to ruin my team over time. It doesn't matter. One game doesn't matter in that way.
As a coach, I'd rather lose a game that we should have won than to win by reinforcing bad habits.
I've in the past, I've literally started the worst players on our teams in must-win games because the best players on our teams didn't deserve it because of their behavior. And guess what? They were pretty well behaved for the next few weeks and pretty much for the rest of the season. And we ended up having a pretty good season where they were able to put the team a little bit on their back in a very productive and fun way for everybody, because we decided to throw a couple of games to teach them a lesson. That will never happen in a non-team based or even non-structured team in esports, because there's no sitting. You kick the guy or he quits and he goes and finds another team, and none of those problems get solved. They just get passed on to someone else. The main reason I really came onto Virtual Real is because I want to bring the traditional sports model to esports. One of the biggest reasons being a coach can actually say, no, I don't care how good you are, you're wrong. I don't care how good you are, you don't speak to people that way. I don't care how good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we can teach people how to be, respectful teammates, and that's going to bleed over into online games and public games, because they're not going to be used to just getting away with just screaming at people because they're better than they are.
Right. It goes back to the goal is to teach these kids to be good teammates, as well as good players. It's as much about communication, understanding, constructive feedback, things of that nature. How to deliver things in a palatable way, as much as it is good mechanically at the game itself.
I think with that, we need to bring in people that understand that aspect of it, because there are coaches for some teams out there that don't understand this themselves, and so they allow that to continue on within their esports program. So finding the right people is really key to I guess fulfilling or fostering a good team. Now, my guys all play the game better than I do because their reflexes are faster. But I bring organization skills, I bring time management skills, I bring other aspects into the gaming that they didn't think of before. And I think part of the hardest part was when I would let them know, hey, you're part of a university team, you're expected to practice at least 14 hours a week with this game title. And they'd be like, well, I don't have that much time. No, wait a second. How many hours a day do you actually get on and mess around in your video games? Like, honestly, how many hours a day? Most people, it's at least 1 to 3 hours. So asking for 14 hours a week is only 2 hours a day. So it's just trying to make them think about it, that it's going to be a constructed, organized idea to make them a better player. And that's what we have to bring to these people that want to compete, is that it's more than just doing it at your leisure. There is structure, there is organization, there is time management, all brought into to make people take us for real, and not just laugh it off or say we're rotting our brains or whatever else people kind of want to throw at us because it's esports and not a physical sport.
To kind of add on to the point you were making about it's important that a lot of coaches don't understand this yet, and that comes down to a lot of those coaches never had traditional sports experience, and they're just people who are kind of like Jared and I, who were once insanely good at the game, still understand it and can teach it and are passionate about it. The difference being him and I played traditional sports and had those additional experiences where they got away with a lot of really bad habits and were still able to be successful. And a big part of what we're really focused on Virtual Reality as a coaching company is not just finding good players, but also teaching them how to coach and training them how to coach. When you want to be a coach for youth hockey, you have to go through a USA Hockey sanctioned class and seminar and system, depending on the level you're at, to a point where at a certain level you actually might even be flying across the country. Because in order for you to actually successfully coach these kids, you have to actually kind of know how. It's not that simple. It's actually a really, really complicated job. And I really think part of what we need moving into this is some sort of kind of industry-wide sanctioned
Like
training program kind of thing. So that, like, anybody can say, hey, I'm really good at video games, I'll coach you, but it doesn't mean they're actually a good coach. And having something like that, I feel like would be very, very helpful.
There's
can
a
be
large part of
fantastic player, but that doesn't make you a good teacher.
Yeah, you have to be able to communicate, right? Like if you play well, but you can't communicate, you're not going to do it. And then to Jody's earlier point about her players being better at the game than her, how many other coaches out there in any sport you name can go out on the field and play to the level that their team is playing? Right, most coaches are really good at like the whole okay, we want the ball to go here for a reason you may not understand, but this is why it's going there. Those kinds of things.
Bill Belichick hasn't played football since high school, and he's the greatest football coach of all time. Right, there were coaches in the leagues that I was coaching in that I played against in men's league who were way better than I am. Their teams got smashed by us every single time because they weren't as good at communicating. Him and I he could have talked circles around me at a high level about the sport, but a 13-year-old isn't going to understand anything that he's saying. And that's really, really important, being able to teach those concepts in a way that the kids can understand them. And that's a huge difference between, what makes a coach or an analyst.
And I think you have a great point there, because coaching is more than just, hey, y'all need to do this in the game. It comes down to wellness checks. Maybe your guys aren't in the right headspace, and how do you handle that? Especially at the college level, where I told them not to practice during midterms because they needed time to study and get through the stress of, I have these big exams in front of me. What do I do? Instead of just blowing me off. And then finding ways to do team building scenarios or team building activities that may have nothing to do with the video game. Like, this summer, I bought Nerf guns for my whole team and took them out for Nerf wars because I thought the college might be mad at me if I did it with paintballs, especially since some of these guys had probably never been hit with a paintball. So I'm starting out gentle with Nerf guns. And we did Nerf wars in using tactics just like we would in the video game for a first-person shooter. And they had a blast. I mean, they were jumping over each other and trying to duck and roll, and it was just fun, goofy, getting to know each other, team building stuff. And then they feel a little bit more comfortable when they get behind the controller and the headset talking with each other because they were a brand new team. So it's just understanding that team building aspect, which is why I laugh so hard when this other college gets on Twitter about me about how I'm a middle-aged woman and don't know nothing about Call of Duty, so why am I a coach? It's like there's so much to it than just the video game. There's you have to care about people and training them to take your job. That's the way I look at it. If you're not training those under you to be better than you are, you don't need to be a coach.
Mm. Yep.
So real quick, really kind of funny story on the understanding your team and understanding how to get them kind of in the right headspace. I remember I was assistant coach for my little brother's hockey team. My dad was the head coach, and this was right in the middle of the big Fortnite boom, and it was like 12-year-olds, and we're in the between the second and the third period of a playoff game where if we lose, the season's over. And usually you have that little kind of in-between period huddle, and everybody gets together, and everybody's expecting my dad to say something about hockey, whatever, and he goes, "Anybody won any Fortnite games recently?" Straight face, just like, "Anybody win anybody recently?" And one kid was like, "Yeah," and he goes, "Cool. Did you make any cool plays?" And like for the next in-between periods, they just talked about Fortnite for a few minutes. We scored 4 goals the next period and won the game.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's about so much more than the sport or the game or the whatever. It's teaching kids like, hey, sometimes you need to be able to just break out of that headspace and say, you know what, things aren't going well. Maybe we take it from a different perspective. And in that case, it was so all you guys talk about in the locker room is Fortnite. So why don't I ask a question about Fortnite and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Jody, I love your story about Nerf Wars. Such almost like a reversal of getting the team to play as a team, right? Because you probably know about this program in the military where they've got they use games to train the platoons. Have you seen it yet before? Yeah.
Not only seen it, but participated in it, and
Really?
it actually started out as like a virtual thing. When I was a military police officer going through some training, we actually would go through like a video game scenario, and depending on your reactions, they would have the computer react to you a certain way. And that's how we would do some of our training for how to de-escalate a situation. Like the one that I vividly remember is the gentleman sitting on his couch with a coffee table in front of him, and there's a bunch of papers, a magazine or two and stuff there, and there's something, you just see the end of something that's dark, and you have to try and de-escalate the situation, and if you don't do it properly, what's under the papers is a gun. If you do de-escalate properly, it's actually a remote control for the TV or something like that. We've also done scenarios where we use video games to help recover from PTSD. And that was started when I was in the Wounded Transition Unit back in 2008, 2009, where they were using scenarios and almost like VR settings to help you work through the terror you had from PTSD. So there's different ways that gaming has been done. And what's really interesting is some of our equipment, like armored vehicles, are controlled with something that looks similar to an Xbox controller, because you're using camera systems to see what's outside around you, because there's no windows on the vehicle.
Wow. You're talking about you're actually in the vehicle using this controller to move around.
Because you're looking at screens.
Not a remote situation.
No.
Wow. That's cool.
And then don't even get me started with how they use different drones and stuff too, and how those are being used. And wow, back in when I first got into the Navy, because I was Navy and Army, so I have a unique situation. I was an aircraft, what do you call it? Aviation electronic technician for E2C Hawkeyes. What an E2C Hawkeye is a land, air, and sea radar type thing. We would do scenarios where we would be like we were inside the aircraft, but we weren't. We were in a simulator, and we would see and have different situations come through the simulator like a game, and whether or not we would do the right things depending on the scenario they gave us. They do the same thing with fighter aircraft, where they're in this box, but when you're inside, it looks like the cockpit of a fighter jet. And they go through different scenarios and whether or not you're going to crash or survive. So, and I think the coolest thing is how Walt Disney World made a naval ship situation in Chicago where they go through battle stations before graduating basic training in the Navy, where it moves and acts like you're out at sea, and it was all built by Walt Disney.
Wow, that's cool.
So yes, it's all being embraced in different ways with the military, and I've been removed for a hot minute, so I can only imagine what else has been added in.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to the end here. I either want to see if we have questions from Andrew or if Joe has anything he would like to add. I guess I want to see if there's questions first.
We had a whole lot of good comments in the chat. It'd be great to get.
Yeah, I was seeing some of it coming along.
I don't know if you want to jump on some of the earlier ones that came up. For instance, going back through it really quickly. Oh, the idea that toxicity a lot of the time, this is from LFG Treehouse, toxicity a lot of the times is a bystander effect dynamic. And then when somebody has the courage to step in and challenge the nonsense, it can do wonders. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the role of the coach in traditional sports. Basically, that's the reason that, a lot of the teams that I was on didn't end up working is because there wasn't someone who was impartial that could say something. And that's honestly really, I guess, what it can kind of come down to is just that's what the coach's job is along with everything else is to be a mediator.
Yeah, true.
We also had a conversation about is this really a bigger issue with society, or is it something to be combated within games? And would love your take on the value of combating this if we're still going to get toxicity coming up from people getting into it.
Yeah, I think as a whole that's a valid point, that if you are just a person going through life and you don't have, you have a nature to be negative and you don't have a way to take yourself out of that mindfulness because you don't join any kind of a team that teaches you better, right? I mean, so many corporations, one of the things that they look for, if they're looking at two different candidates that have similar resumes, but one has a sports background and the other doesn't, they're probably going to hire the one that's been on a team before, right? Because they're more adjusted. They know how to treat others the proper way, and the person who's been just a solo loner is probably not going to get along well with the other people they're working with. But as a whole, this is the point, right? So, you look at gaming pre-esports or non-esports gaming, and that gamer who doesn't join a team of another kind is not going to be necessarily. I mean, this is not everybody in the world, right? Not everybody is going to turn into a bad adult that games and doesn't do other stuff. But yeah. So in general, it is a societal issue. But the whole idea here is if we get them onto a team and teach them the aspects of, interpersonal teamwork and all of those things, sportsmanship, they're going to be a better adult in the end.
All right, excellent. I did want to share that you're talking about virtual reality for combating military PTSD. Virtually Better, the company here in the Atlanta area that deals with that directly. We had a question from YouTube asking if any of you are going to be at Siege on Sunday in Dorville. I think, are any of you in Georgia?
I'm in Greenville, South Carolina, so it's a 2.5-hour drive for me to get down to Atlanta. But I'm the closest one of everybody here.
I'm in Texas.
All right, so yes, Wonder Jam. Sorry, I don't think we're going to see any of them on Sunday. All right, last thing. Can you share where people can get in touch with you? They want to talk to you more fully about this.
Yeah, Our website is virtualreload.com. We're also on all the social channels, either Virtual Reload or some of them are the Virtual Reload, but Twitter is Virtual Reload, and so is Instagram. Facebook is the Virtual Reload, and I believe Twitch is the Virtual Reload as well.
I'm on
And
Twitch,
Jody?
Twitter, Bosnwifey, BOSNWIFEY. So that's Twitch and Twitter. Also, ouesports.org or sooneresports.org if you wanted to get in touch with the University of Oklahoma and our esports programs. And yeah, just using my gamer tag, you'll find me. And I am also on Discord under Bosenwifey #6724. If you want to send me a question, I'll be happy to answer it.
And Joe, where can we find you?
You can find me on all your social media on the Thirsty Minds. Also, Rage Girls. We also have our landing page, but we're doing a registration right now for young ladies who want to come be a part of the league. Doing our first tournament come starting January. It's Rage Girls, RageGirlsSeries.org. And Thirsty Minds can be found on Instagram and Thirsty Minds on Twitter as well.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Everybody watching, stay tuned. We're doing a collaborative game art workshop with some very good artists. So I put this link up there to Magma Studio IO. You can click on that. We'll be live streaming that. If you're a GGDA member, you can get in our Discord and talk with the folks who are running the collaborative game art session. All of you who are on watching the streams right now, you are definitely welcome to tune in, and we'll get that set up, and we'll say thank you one more time to the entire Virtual Reload team. Glad to have had you here.
Thank you very
for
much
having us.